YouTube, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the show. Look, if you're holding XRP, you need to pay attention. Liquidity just flipped. ETFs are all lining up and the rails of global finance, they're being rewired in real time. This isn't opium. This is the setup before the shock, and we are starting right here. The quiet turnaround. You see the article title, right? Federal Reserve allegedly pumps $29.4 billion into the banking system. Look, I want you just to look around. There was no press conference about this, no fireworks, yet billions, it just slid back into the system. The Fed's standing repo facility, it lit up like Christmas trees at the month end. Record taps, right as Jerome Powell, good old Jerome, signaled QT wraps in December, about 3 weeks from now. And reserves here, they're going to need to rise again. That's not random. That is pressure relief for a strand money market, right? Historically, these quiet injections, they happen right before the headline event that everyone pretends forced the liquidity. This is the same script, folks. Stealth easing, sudden catalyst, and then you get asset reprice. If you're waiting for permission from CNBC, Fox Business, Jim Cramer, guess what? It's already too late. The liquidity tide is turning, and crypto is the highest beta shoreline. I want you to think about that. And we're going to jump into that, the build out where no one's watching here. You can see from the article, the Federal Reserve actually, it ended up being $50 billion in repo agreements on October 31st. Just no news, nothing. They just did it. Like nobody was going to see what was going on. Here you can see, we'll blow up this beautiful picture for you, and then whoop, right on in. Just full on, straight on injection, folks. And now we're going to jump in to this because everyone's been talking about Bitcoin ETFs, Ethereum funds, but no one's looking at this. Okay. This is Upexi listed on NASDAQ. You can see the ticker symbol right here under UPXI. They just quietly transformed themselves into a Solana focused digital asset treasury company. Now think MicroStrategy, but I want you to think about this for Solana. They're not just holding Solana, they're stacking it. Over $2.1 million worth of Solana. That's worth nearly $400 million, which is generating $75,000 a day from staking rewards. That's about a 7 to 8% yield on autopilot. Pure digital income. Their treasury strategy is already lined up to 82% per share, with early investors nearly doubling their money since April. They are buying discounted locked tokens, they're earning passive yield and positioning themselves as the easiest public stock to get exposure to Solana's next run, and is going to be a next run. And with Solana and its ecosystem currently booming, anywhere from stablecoins with the Western Union partnership to NFTs, Upexis, their move couldn't be timed any better. You add in the leadership tied to major crypto names like Sol Big Brain and John Najarian, this thing is set to run. If Solana becomes the next Ethereum, Upexi right here, this could be your MicroStrategy 2.0, and you know what that means. Watch this one closely, folks. It is just getting started, and you can see right here up on the screen, November 11th, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, to have their first quarter earnings call. We'll be paying attention to that. Something you need to look for. Now, here's the build out that no one is watching, okay? And this is interesting. Actually, let me go back to here. This is Securitize. Remember now, Securitize has partnered with Ripple and BlackRock. We got war headlines, election drama. The real story, though, is the plumbing. You gotta pay attention to the plumbing. Institutions are wiring an instant settlement and tokenized rails. BlackRock leadership, they are openly pushing tokenization. Franklin Templeton already runs tokenized funds. And now the new piece of the puzzle, it's a USD stablecoin from Ripple, RLUSD as you know, engineering to settle fiat card flows on the XRP ledger with MasterCard. WeBank, who is the issuer of Gemini's card, and Gemini all in the loop on this. That is not a pilot in a PDF. That's payment infrastructures connecting to a ledger that closes in seconds. And it doesn't need a dozen different intermediaries here, right? So while crypto Twitter is out there arguing about dog coins, well, you got banks who are integrating systems that actually move size. Listen to this.
Securitize is the first company of its kind to go public via a SPAC deal with Cantor Fitzgerald Equity Partners 2.
Securitize is IPOing.
Going public at a $1.25 billion valuation.
Institutions want access to like some investment themes or narratives, and they need the right vehicle to do it. Like real world assets is one of those narratives.
There is a secular tailwind right now behind tokenization. A lot of people believe, and I'm one of them, that the tokenized asset space is going to absolutely explode.
It's a good time for them to IPO, right?
Yes.
They might get some of that love from TradFi that went into Circle.
Everyone in crypto is like, I'm bearish Circle.
Rather than justify it.
And then at 5x because people needed exposure to stable coins.
The Securitize can be like, well, we have the next thing, which is real world assets.
And now if people want exposure to real world assets, they can do this.
Tokenize the world. Tokenize the world. The world. Tokenize.
The main theme is tokenization. That is where this world is going. Which moves us over to this, the DTCC breadcrumb. I'll blow this up. 9. That's the number to remember. That is how many XRP ETFs have shown up across DTCC listings and trackers. You got names going from 21 shares to Bitwise to Franklin to CoinShares and many more. That's your cute version of the story. Let me give you the adult version of this story, right? It's rated R. DTCC listing doesn't need SEC approval. It does mean that the back office pipes are getting plumbed in. So when or if the SEC declares those S1s effective, because it's going to happen, those funds can create and redeem on day one. You need to prepare now for the flow. If you see tickers appear, that means that the ops team, your back-end team, they finished their homework, right? They don't confuse not approved with not happening. Understand what readiness looks like. This right here, this is readiness. And then we get over to BlackRock, right? Larry Fink keeps repeating it. He says, so we are at the beginning of tokenizing everything. All the way from ETFs to treasuries to real estate credit. It will all be tokenized. Why does that matter? Because the second you digitize assets at scale, you hit a hard wall. Cross-border instant settlement. You need a bridge that's fast, that's neutral, folks. Neutral, not a wall garden. It needs to be neutral. And that is global, right? Ripple spent a decade building one, and they're now working with banks who once tried to slow them down. Regulations aren't a doorstep anymore. The doors are opening because the money wants through. The world doesn't adopt new rails for ideology. It does it for efficiency. Listen to Larry.
The opportunity for tokenization is probably the most important component of how we are going to see the evolution of the financial plumbing of the world. And the reality is, if we could tokenize all our ETFs, all $5.3 trillion of our ETFs, and provide that in a digital wallet, you could seamlessly, without fees, going from a digital currency or a stable coin or whatever that may be in your digital wallet and buy bond or stocks. And I believe that is going to be the future.
I think Larry Fink knows what the future is going to be. And let's get into the press release that changes everything for card payments. Let's talk about it. Ripple's own, let's scroll down so you can see it. Ripple's own release says that they are teaming with MasterCard, WebBank, and Gemini to use RLUSD on the XRP ledger for stablecoin payments of fiat card transactions, starting with the Gemini credit card. That is a monster, an absolute monster wedge into everyday payments. Card spend on top, blockchain settlement underneath. You see how this works? No one even knows they're using crypto. Just like you send an email, you don't care how an email gets sent. You don't care what goes on behind the scenes. You don't care if there's a little mouse and a wheel that's spinning it so it gets pushed through. All you care about is that that email goes through. That is exactly how crypto is going to work. You will still do your everyday process. You'll go to the store, you'll swipe a card, you'll scan your phone, but the back end, all the crypto and digital financial technology rails, they are being used, but you don't care about that. It doesn't affect you, right? But things start to get cheaper and move quicker. Folks, this is how crypto goes mainstream without anyone needing to say the word crypto. And they don't have to, and they won't have to. Now we get this. We got Jerome Powell here.
The size of the balance sheet will.
So we got Jerome Powell here, right? Who literally says that reserves will need to be added again. Not today, not as a headline QE, but as the system grows. Meanwhile, the SEC fight is effectively over, right? Judge Torres framework, it stands. XRP itself, it's not a security. It's never going to be a security. And when it's trading in the secondary market, while institutional sales faced restrictions and fined, they're right. It's a net here. Partial, but meaningful clarity. And Ripple, what are they doing in the meantime? They just keep on building. So I want to ask you a very uncomfortable question here. In a world that's moving towards digital reserves where stablecoin settlement becomes table stakes, what assets get integrated into the rails versus traded around them? I think you know the answer. You don't need conspiracy theories here. You just need to follow the incentives, the legal clarity, and where large institutions are actually putting code and capital. Think about that. Which moves us over to this. As Brad put this out, he's like, look, this could be a November to remember. And he's right. Zoom out for a second and look at the window that we are in. We got spot ETF approvals coming this week. Swift's ISO 20022 Big Bang cutover at the end of the month. And continued bank connectivity to real-time tokenized rails. Some things here are possible, others are scheduled, right? But the point here isn't to promise 7 miracles in 7 weeks. It is to recognize how many catalysts are converging in the same quarter. If even 2 or 3 of these hit, liquidity won't just trickle, folks. It's going to reroute, which moves us to the last point, the shutdown pivot. Listen up.
To the Senate duly chosen and sworn having voted in the affirmative, the motion upon reconsideration is agreed to.
There it is, right? DC finally moved. The Senate advanced a 60-40 vote to reopen the government. If the full bill clears here, both chambers, and it gets signed, you got Treasury spending, which is going to resume. And yes, there is a lot of delayed outlays sitting in these pipes. You got to pair that with the Fed signaling that QT ends in December, a month from now. And you got a friendly backdrop for risk assets and pending ETF approvals to start moving again. Policy gridlock, it's going to hit pause. Markets are gaming the unpause. You're a gamer, you know what that means. That's how flow behaves, everyone. So here's the message that I want to get through to you. Black swans, they don't cause liquidity. They rationalize it. The liquidity is already arriving. The rails are already being laid, and XRP sits at the intersection of real-time settlement and institutional on-ramps with tokenization narrative tailwinds. The DTCC prep, it's in the background, and new payment trials, well, they're in the foreground. Your edge isn't predicting a date. It is positioning before headlines explain the move. Manage risk like adults, but don't sleepwalk through the part of the cycle where the wiring gets finished and the switch flips. If this has helped and you can now see a broader, clearer picture, hit the like button so the algorithm actually shows this to other XRP holders. Drop your take in the comments. Which catalyst do you think is going to drop first? ETFs, the ISO cutover effect, or RLUSD scaling? And if you want my full playbook, hey, the link for the call, it's in the description below.